Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're plunging into the fascinating currents of knowledge, always looking for those compelling insights. And have you ever stopped to think about how some of the biggest innovations, the things that really changed our world, weren't actually planned? They were just stumbled upon. Happy accidents, maybe even things that look like failures at first. Life's full of surprises, and it turns out the path of invention is too. So today we're doing a deep dive into accidental discoveries that changed the world. We've been digging through some great sources like History's piece on momentous accidental inventions and another from the Goethe Institute. Our mission. Well, it's to uncover these kind of wild, unexpected stories. Behind life-saving medicines, sure, but also just everyday things you probably use without a second thought. Get ready, because sometimes genius isn't really a flash of inspiration. Sometimes it's, I don't know, a moldy petri dish, or a melting chocolate bar, or even just coming home from walking the dog. Okay, let's dive in. We'll start with some medical marvel that came out of, well, pretty messy labs, actually.
It's amazing the sheer serendipity involved in some of these. Almost unbelievable luck, really. Take penicillin, the world's first antibiotic. So picture this. 1928, bacteriologist Alexander Fleming, he's back in his London lab after a vacation, finds one of his petri dishes is contaminated by moldy. But what catches his eye, the really key thing, is the area right around the mold, totally clear of bacteria.
Just a clean zone?
Exactly. That observation was everything. He identified the mold, Penicillium notatum, called the substance penicillin, published in 29. But, and this is a big but, he really struggled to purify it, to stabilize it, make it usable.
So he had this incredible breakthrough, this potential world changer, but the practical part, getting it to people, that was still like a decade off. That seems like a huge gap.
It was a whole decade. The basic science was there, yeah, but the methods to actually extract and keep the active compounds stable, they were still pretty basic back then.
Right.
So this story isn't just about noticing something weird. It really highlights how critical it is to not just see the anomaly, but to stick with it. The sometimes tedious follow-up work, purification, stabilization.
Yeah, the less glamorous part.
Totally. Fleming's insight was brilliant, but it took another decade. And other people's persistence, chemists at Oxford University, specifically to really unleash it. By 1942, it was finally in widespread use.
Wow. And just think, that single accidental discovery, it saved millions, probably prevented millions of deaths from infections. And it's still the most commonly used antibiotic today.
Yeah, it's a testament to patience and collaboration, too. Now, you'd think these breakthroughs would mostly happen in labs, right? But our next accidental discovery, totally different scene, a farm.
Now, this one definitely sounds like something out of a mystery novel. Back in the 1920s, farmers were noticing cattle, sheep, they were mysteriously bleeding to death.
Bleeding to death from what? Well, it happened after they grazed on moldy, sweet clover hay. Even simple vet procedures could cause fatal bleeding. A Canadian vet, Frank Schofield, he looked into it, found the moldy hay had this powerful anticoagulant, something stopping the blood from clotting.
Okay, so they knew what it was doing, but not the compound itself. That must have taken some serious detective work.
It did. Scientists at the University of Wisconsin, led by Carl Link, they finally isolated the compound in 1940. And they found a derivative, a really potent one, and patented it as warfarin.
Warfarin. Named after Worf, right? The Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation.
Exactly. Worf funded the work, very practical naming. But here's where it gets really wild. Before it was used in humans for things like heart attacks or blood clots, its first approved use in 1948.
What?
Rat poison.
Right, seriously. Rat poison?
Yeah.
The same stuff used as a blood thinner for people.
The very same. Its journey, from causing cattle deaths to being rat poison and then becoming a human lifesaver. It's just a striking example of how a compound's purpose can completely shift. You find new applications, new understanding, really tells you to look beyond the obvious use sometimes.
That is quite a transformation. So how did they make that leap? From rat poison to human medicine? Was it just a sudden idea?
It was more gradual, really. Careful studies, clinical trials.
Right.
It wasn't until the mid-1950s that it really transitioned to human use. And probably the most famous early patient was President Eisenhower. He was treated with warfarin after his heart attack in 1955.
Incredible. Something designed to kill pests ends up being a lifeline. Okay, speaking of heart health, there's another essential device, the pacemaker. And that came from what sounds like a tiny mistake.
Yeah, another oops moment with huge consequences. 1960, American electrical engineer Wilson Greatbatch. He's trying to build an oscillator.
Okay, what's that for?
Basically a device to produce a rhythmic electrical signal. He wanted it to measure heart rhythm problems like tachycardia, a heart beating too fast. But he made a slip-up. He grabbed the wrong resistor, put in one with 1 kilo resistance instead of 10.
Ah, a simple component mix-up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the circuit he built with that wrong resistor, it produced this odd rhythm. And Great Batch, he immediately thought, that sounds like a heartbeat. That little error, that unexpected rhythm, led directly to the first implantable pacemaker.
Amazing. A small mistake, a completely different outcome, and it changes cardiology forever. Okay, so we've hit some life-changing medical breakthroughs, but let's shift gears. What about those everyday items? The things we use all the time and probably never think about where they came from. Turns out a lot of those have pretty wild origins, too.
Oh, yeah. Here's a classic, Velcro. Nature providing the inspiration. 1941, Swiss engineer George de Mestral. He goes for a walk with his dog.
Standard day so far.
Right. But they both come back covered in these tiny, prickly cocklebur plants. Annoying, right? But de Mestral, being an engineer, he looks closer. He sees the burrs are shaped like these tiny hooks. And those hooks snag perfectly onto the loops in his clothes and his dog's fur.
Ah, the old hook and loop idea straight from nature. But turning that into a product, that couldn't have been easy.
Not at all. He spent a decade trying to replicate that. A whole decade figuring out how to make his own artificial hook and loop fabric. Finally patented it in 1955 as Velcro.
And Velcro, that name comes from French, right?
Yeah, velour for velvet and crochet for hook. Even though he actually made it from nylon. Took a while to catch on in fashion, interestingly. But NASA, they loved it. Used it all over the place on spacesuits and the shuttle.
Right, that's why everyone thinks NASA invented it.
Exactly. That's a common misconception. Now, of course, it's everywhere. Clothes, shoes, healthcare, cars, planes. And they're still tweaking it. Just a few years back, 2021, they apparently figured out how to make quieter Velcro.
Quieter Velcro? Was loud Velcro really a problem people were worried about?
Apparently. Who knew? It's funny, the little things they refine.
That is amazing. A dog walk leads to quieter fastening technology decades later. Okay, from things that stick firmly, let's talk about things designed to stick. Well, less firmly. An invention that basically celebrates its own failure.
Yeah, the Post-it note. Perfect example.
Yeah.
1968, Spencer Silver, he's a chemist at 3M. His assignment was clear. Invent a stronger adhesive, more powerful glue.
Okay, standard R&D goal.
But what he got was the exact opposite. He created this mixture that stuck, yeah, but it was super easy to peel off and didn't leave any residue, a low-tack reusable adhesive.
So by the definition of his assignment, he'd completely failed.
Initially, yeah, he thought he'd failed. But that failure, as the story goes, it changed the history of the paper mill, gave us the Post-it note. It's brilliant because it's about temporary connections, not permanent ones. His failure wasn't just a different glue. It created a whole new use for adhesive. Sometimes the breakthrough is making something that does the opposite of what you planned, right? Opens up whole new ways of thinking.
That's a great lesson in reframing things. Okay, from paper, let's go to the kitchen. There's a story involving a chocolate bar.
The microwave oven, yes. Another happy accident. Pussy Spencer, an American engineer working at Raytheon. He's working on radar equipment during World War II, building magnetrons, the tubes that generate microwaves for radar.
Very high-tech stuff.
And one day, he notices something weird. A chocolate bar he had in his pocket had melted.
Uh-oh, while standing near the radar equipment.
Exactly. He suspected the microwaves from the magnetron he was working on were the culprit. So, quick thinker, he decides to test his hunch. He grabs some popcorn kernels.
Oh, I know this part.
Yeah. Place them near the tube, and sure enough, pop, 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 they burst into popcorn. That simple observation, that melted chocolate bar, led super quickly to the development of the first commercial microwave oven, the Raider range, in 1946. Changed cooking, and especially reheating leftovers, forever.
A delicious oops, indeed. Okay, so we've had lifesavers, everyday conveniences, but not every accidental discovery brings, purely positive results. Some have much darker, more complicated stories.
Absolutely. And that brings us to dynamite. The story starts in 1847. Italian chemist Ascanio Sobrero, he invents nitroglycerin, mixes glycerol with nitric and sulfuric acids.
And nitroglycerin is potent.
Extremely potent. Way more powerful than gunpowder, but also incredibly volatile, dangerous stuff. Sobrero himself was actually horrified by it. He saw how unstable and destructive it was, and he actively opposed its use.
He opposed his own invention.
He did, but
yeah,
his lab mate was Alfred Nobel, and Nobel saw something else. He saw potential, big potential for profitable explosives, weapons too.
Nobel. Right, so he took Sobrero's unstable invention and tried to make it safer. Or at least usable.
He worked on stabilizing it, yeah. In 1867, he figured out he could mix nitroglycerin with silica powder, this stuff called Kieselguhr, and it made it much more stable. That was dynamite. But getting there wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Nobel blew up his own factories. Twice.
He blew up his factories twice. How did he even keep going after that? That sounds reckless.
Incredibly persistent. Maybe recklessly so, yeah. But he succeeded commercially. And Sobrero, he deeply regretted his original discovery. There's a quote from him: "When I think of all the victims killed during nitroglycerin explosions and the terrible havoc that has been wreaked, I am almost ashamed to admit to be its discoverer."
Wow, that's heavy. Almost ashamed.
It is. And the ultimate irony, the really profound irony, is that the huge fortune Nobel made selling dynamite, this weapon of war, as some called it, is what eventually funded the Nobel Prizes, including the Peace Prize, recognizing humanitarian contributions.
That is quite the paradox, isn't it? Sobrero's shame funding prizes for peace. It really makes you think. Okay, let's wrap up our journey through these complex legacies with maybe the most popular beverage on the planet, born from trying to find a painkiller and, surprisingly, a temperance movement.
We are talking about Coca-Cola. So the story starts around 1866. John Pemberton, an American pharmacist, he'd been badly injured in the Civil War, and he developed a morphine dependency.
Okay, a common problem back then, sadly.
Very. So he was trying to create an opiate-free painkiller, something to help him kick the morphine habit. His first attempt was this drink called Pemberton's French Wine Coca. And it contained, well, alcohol leaves from the coca plant.
Which contained cocaine, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
trace amounts back then.
Yeah.
And cola nuts for caffeine. So it was basically a medicinal tonic with a kick.
Got it. So how did it become Coke?
The key moment was 1886. Georgia, where Pemberton lived, brought in prohibition laws as part of the temperance movement. Alcohol was out, so Pemberton had to reformulate his tonic, make an alcohol-free version.
Okay, necessity being the mother of invention, or reinvention.
Exactly. And while he was tinkering with this new alcohol-free formula, the accident happened. He, or maybe his assistant, accidentally mixed the syrup concoction with carbonated water instead of plain water.
Ah, the fizz was the accident.
The fizz was the happy accident. And he tasted it and realized, hey, this is pretty good. It seems less like medicine now and more like a refreshing fountain drink. So he decided to market it that way. Called it Coca-Cola, after its two key original ingredients, coca leaves and cola nuts.
Wow. So carbonated water changed everything?
Yeah.
But Pemberton, it didn't end well for him, did it?
No, sadly.
Yeah.
His health got worse, the morphine dependency continued, and he ended up selling off his shares in the Coca-Cola company pretty cheaply before he died, just 2 years later, in poverty. It was his business partner, Asa Griggs Camler, who really saw the potential and turned Coca-Cola into the global giant it is today. A real twist of fate for Pemberton.
What an incredible range of stories we've covered today. From antibiotics that saved millions, pacemakers keeping hearts beating, to, sticky notes on our desks and fizzy drinks. It really shows how some of the most profound changes came not from some grand plan, but from just seeing something unexpected. From noticing a mistake or a failure and thinking, maybe there's something here.
Absolutely. These stories, they really underscore the power of keeping an open mind, don't they?
Yeah.
Being willing to investigate something that doesn't fit. Having the curiosity to follow where an unexpected result leads you. It's about spotting that serendipity that might be hiding right there in plain sight.
Yeah, and these deep dives, they don't just give us interesting facts. They kind of challenge our assumptions about how progress even happens. They really highlight how valuable it can be to look closely at something that seems like a setback or just plain weird. It's a pretty powerful reminder, I think, that breakthroughs can happen when we're just open to the unexpected.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. How might being more open to the unexpected change how you approach problems? Whether it's something small in your daily life or a big project you're working on, what mistake or unexpected result in your own experience might actually hold the key to something completely new?